Hey everybody, today I'm going to make a video, an informational video about technological advances in World War I by the land. And there's going to be 10 facts and 10 examples, pictures of the technological advances. So yep, here we go. So the first advance we're going to talk about is tanks, and tanks saw battle for the first time on September 16, 1916, and it was designed in 1915. The first tank, the British Mark I, as I said, was designed in 1915, and the tanks built back then, they weren't very protective of the person inside operating the tank, but as time went on, things, they got more developed, more technology developed, and by July 1918, the Tank Corps was established, garnering almost 30,000 members by the end of the war. So the next advancement we're going to talk about is the flamethrower. And during the medieval times, the Byzantines and the Chinese had similar weapons to flamethrowers, but they just hurled flaming items, not really fire at the enemy. But in 1901, the idea was submitted to the German army by Richard Fielder, and it was tested and it worked. So the real effect of flamethrowers wasn't seen until trench warfare was introduced, and flamethrowers, they neutralized the enemy by burning them, and they couldn't really do anything about it. Like grenades really maybe stunned the enemy, but didn't really neutralize the effect of the enemy and take out the enemy. But flamethrowers, on the other hand, really, when you're burning, you're not going to think about turning around and shooting someone like, oh, I got to shoot this guy. You're not going to think about it. So you're trying to stay alive, and they were burnt to death by flamethrowers on many occasions. So the next advancement we're going to talk about are tracer bullets, and tracer bullets are exactly what they sound like. During the war, fighting at night wasn't really advantageous for either group. So the British developed tracer bullets, and what the tracer bullets do, when you're fighting at night or you shoot your gun, you're trying to aim at the enemy, you can't see who you're aiming at. So what the tracer bullet does is after you shoot it, it kind of, there's a flame that comes out of the back, kind of like just like a phosphorescent trail that comes out of the back of it, and when that happens, you can see a bullet. Now, the first attempt in 1915 wasn't successful, really, but they tried again in 1960 with the .303 SPG Mark V2G, and it emitted a bright green-white trail, and it actually helped out shooters instead of not helping at all. So the next advance we're going to review is the machine gun. And the machine gun, before World War I, the gun everybody looked at, it was the most popular, it was a rapid fire weapon, was the Gatling gun, and weighed and was similar to a cannon. But after this, the British, once again, produced machine guns, and they were very reliable. But a heavy caliber machine gun required a minimum of 6 men to operate it. But as it, got more developed and better technology came around, it required less than that, and it was more portable than the bigger machine guns that they had that required 6 men. So the next reviewed advancement will be the mobile X-ray. X-rays back then were too big, too heavy, and even now too hard to move. So when soldiers were injured in the field, it was, to get a proper diagnostic of what's wrong with them, it was tough. It was hard, but you really want to know what's wrong with your soldiers so they can go back and fight, or they need more extensive medical care. So here steps Marie Curie, who designed and created the Mobile X-ray Center, and by October 1914, she installed X-ray machines in several cars and small trucks, which toured smaller surgical stations at the front. And so by doing this, this helped X-rays be mobile, hence mobile X-ray machine. So the next item we're reviewing is poison gas. And poison gas, although it may have seemed it would have been more effective, it really wasn't. It only accounted for a small amount of deaths during the war. But it was very devastating in the future. So, it was first used by Germans during the Battle of Second Ypres in 1915. The gas was actually ineffective because it depended on a lot of factors. For example, it depended on the type of gas, the way it was delivered, and the weather on that day. But it provided, but engineers kept working at it and trying to figure out ways to make it better and more lethal. So in World War II, a lot of people were feared because of this advancement between poison gas 20 years later. So, in response to poison gas, they created gas masks. Gas masks were used in World War I as a result of the poisonous gas that were sent down in the trenches in order to kill and distort the enemies. So, the first people to make it were the British, and they made it, it was dipped, it really wasn't protective on the eye because it was easy to break. But as time went on, they became more sophisticated because poison gas was being used more and more. They dipped the mask in anti-gas chemicals. Some of these chemicals are washing soda, glycerin, water, sodium phosphite. So multiple things they dipped it into in order to help fight against the poison gas. So the next advancement wasn't exactly made to kill people, but it was made to help clean up, per se. And this is sanitary napkins. And cellulose is a byproduct of sugarcane, processed sugarcane, and it was developed during the war as field bandages. But after a while, a few nurses found out that it made for a great disposable sanitary napkin. And in 1920, the company Kotex brought out its first commercial pad, freeing women everywhere from using the reusable rag. So the next advancement also wasn't made to kill. And in the winter of 1918 in Berlin, children were suffering from rickets. And rickets is a condition where your bones become soft and deformed and out of shape. So the doctor, Kurt Hodgkinski, noticed this, and he noticed his patients were pale. So he did an experiment. And as he did this experiment, he created sun lamps. And the sun lamps provided ultraviolet light. The sun, pushes out UV rays, so this actually helps. And when this happens, it nourishes the bones, and it actually proved to improve the bone structure and health of the children and anybody affected by rickets during this cold winter in 1918. So last but certainly not least is the telegraph. And the telegraph was used to transmit messages over long distances using a wire, but more specifically, they created signals by making and breaking an electrical connection. So this is huge during the time in order for people to communicate over long distances and be able to cooperate successfully.